welcome. Welcome to the Environmental Equity Today, brought to you by Earthshare New Jersey. As we've shared in the past, are very passionate about making sure that everyone knows that everyone is entitled to a safe place, clean air, fresh water, open space, and all the rights and privileges that everyone else is entitled to. We started the Environmental Equity Project to help educate the public about environmental equity. And here in New Jersey, we work very hard to make sure that everyone knows not only what environmental equity is, but what are some of the great programs and successes that different individuals and communities have had in making sure that there is safer, cleaner, and greener spaces for our community members. So I'm going to turn this over to Sarah Holman. She's going to lead us today, and she is our master of ceremonies, so to speak, as we embark on a conversation with the Ironbound Community Corporation to talk about environmental justice. Sarah, welcome everyone.
Hello. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for coming tonight. It should be a very interesting and important talk. Um, just a few things to note. We will be recording the presentation, so if you have your cameras on, keep note of that. Try to stay muted throughout the presentation and save your questions for the end. You could put your questions in the chat if you have them throughout the presentation, or wait until the end to ask them. Tonight we have Ironbound Community Corporation from Newark, New Jersey, and joining us, and they're going to give a discussion on environmental justice in Newark, a history of advocacy and organizing. The presentation will go into the history of Ironbound Community Corporation in terms of environmental justice, as well as the current fights that the frontline communities are facing, including the public health challenges that come with industrialization. So the two speakers tonight will be Hazel Applewhite and Nancy, and they will be sharing with us. If you're ready, you can go ahead.
Hazel, are you starting?
Hi, thank you. Sorry about that. So my name is Hazel Applewhite, CEO for Ironbound Community Corporation, multitasking as usual. Thank you guys so much for having us. Thank you for being here. Thank you for Earthshare New Jersey for, having us in this space to talk about more about the work that we do within our community, which is Newark, New Jersey. Ironbound is a 56-year-old agency that has been in the Ironbound, serving the Ironbound, which is the East Ward in Newark, for over 56 years. A lot of the work we do is around environmental justice, right? Fighting the environmental injustice. That's what Nancy's going to talk a lot about. And our work stem around, from fighting toxic incinerators, toxic power plants, fighting for clean transportation, policies around clean air, clean water, ports, freight, transportation. And Nancy's going to talk a lot about that throughout the next 20 minutes as she walks us through this journey. In our presentation, you'll see that we cover topics. We may not be able to get to all of them, which is the work that we do. A lot of organizing, right? We also do a lot of food justice work. A lot of talk, and Nancy can talk to you about that, around the parks and, our work to basically save the parks that was also contaminated, rivers that, that has been, contaminated the Passaic River, sits right in our neighborhood. A lot of housing work, anti-gentrification, and a lot of policy work, right? Because you can't do this work without, there are so much policies out there, right, that stem from hundreds of years, right, that has basically been created, right, what I would call to just continue servicing injustice, right? So if you want to do long-term changes, right, there has to be policy changes associated with it. And we kind of, mirror our work with that. So I'm going to hand it over to Nancy Zach. I have my colleague Nancy Zach who's on with me, and I also have Gustavo, who's also on with me, and he, they're part of the Ironbound team. So say hi to the both of them, guys. And again, just want to really thank you guys. And I'm going to chime in with Nancy, but Nancy's going to take it away. Thank you. Next slide, please. Next slide, Gustavo.
Well, without my camera, I can't show you the pictures I was going to show you. So I could just talk, I guess, though. Oh, there we go. Yes, ironbound neighborhood surrounded by industry, right? Ironbound in the 1880s was a beautiful, tree. Grew a lot of hay. It was a product. There's some wonderful pictures of ironbound in those days, which I brought, but I can't show you some of that because we don't have a way for you to see it. But the industrial came because of the river, and the industrial also blocked the river off because the factories were very close to the river, and in the last few decades, a lot of storage containers were piled about six stories high along the river so that you couldn't even see the river. And many children grew up not knowing they were near a river at all. And so one of the things we are currently working on is there is a cleanup plan for the Passaic River. We are involved with the EPA with that. But the industry is the thing that affected the people's health. And we had, when I moved here, we had explosions going on in the neighborhood, and we had the smells, but the explosions, there was one during a school day, and students at St. Aloysius School just happened to be out that day. Good thing, because the windows blew out for the whole school by the explosion that took place. And there were explosions of different kinds, small industrial explosions. There was a warehouse on Thomas Street next to a school where at night, it was an empty warehouse. Someone was bringing barrels of toxic materials. In the end, there were 30,000 barrels of highly toxic materials in that building, and our fire department called it a toxic time bomb waiting to blow up. And people in the neighborhood were obviously really upset about it. When I moved to Newark, I was here as a high school teacher, and I taught for 6 years, and then I became involved in ICC. And when the dioxin was discovered in Ironbound in 1983, at one of the marches against or to demand the cleanup of the dioxin, I saw a former high school student of mine, and I said, "How are you doing, Diane?" She was now in her 20s, mid 20s. She said, "I'm married. I have had, she said, I used to play. We were there by the Diamond Alkali Agent Orange producing site where the dioxin came from. She said, we used to run up and down those little hills you see there. We did not know there was anything wrong. I had two children who were born with birth defects, and I myself have serious health problems. I don't remember exactly what she told me they were, but they were serious. And she was certain that it was because of her contact with dioxin. And at that moment in time, all the things that I had been reading about and learning about from the Ironbound Community Corporation about the toxic waste and how it could be dangerous to your health. At that moment, it really, struck me in my heart and became a very important um, moment for my life. And I got involved with Ironbound Community Corporation. My husband, Arnold Cohen, and Arnold in 1981. The And guess what? 10 of them were in the Ironbound. And so Arnold and other people in the neighborhood formed the Ironbound Committee Against Toxic Waste. ICATW is the acronym for that, in 1981. And that group went on to battle 5 incinerators. Some of them were really horrendous. At-Sea Incineration was an international company that wanted to burn toxic waste on boats in New Orleans in the water and on a big boat in Newark Bay here. And there was a huge fight about At-Sea Incineration. It was a giant international company. Am I supposed to look at these slides? Oh, well, you can see uh, some of some of all of our stories about that I am talking about are told in the Ironbound Voices newspaper, which was a trilingual newspaper that we began publishing in 1978. And that was my first job in the Ironbound Community Corporation, one of my first jobs. And we have digitalized all of the Iron Voices with the help of the Newark Public Library, the main library. So you can go to digital.npl.org and you can click on Ironbound Community Corporation, and then you can click on Ironbound Voices, and you can go page by page from 1978 to 2001 that was produced, our newspaper. So it tells a great deal more about what I'm mentioning now. We had also an early fight against the airport because the planes were coming in so low that people's houses shook and they were very, very afraid. There had been plane in Elizabeth, a plane crash, and the noise from the airplanes. And we did things like go to the airport and sing protest songs, Christmas Carol time. We got the Port Authority to make a change in the plane routes temporarily, taking them more over the industrial area and less over the residential. But however, when Ronald Reagan came in and we lost some of our the controllers, the airport controllers, they went back to the original pathways. So the airport noise is still an issue here. But this neighborhood, when we were able to talk to people about the health impact that chemicals have on them, people would get involved. Um, and we had some people, we had all ages of people, we had senior citizens. Some of them were very involved in, we had children. There's this wonderful cover from Ironbound Voices that says pollution and children don't mix. And there's a big picture in June 1984 issue of Ironbound residents say no to Newark garbage dumps. Ironbound stands up 800 march against the incinerator. This was down Ferry Street, the main commercial street in our community. And this was all in Portuguese, Spanish, and English, with volunteers from the neighborhood translating for us and becoming involved. We had a great deal of help from the churches in our neighborhood. We had three very wonderful uh, um, pastors who got very involved and set up what was called the Ironbound Ecumenical Association. And that involved every type of church, Catholic, Protestant, evangelical, that we had in our community. And they joined us with their wearing their robes and holding demonstrations and candlelight vigils on Ferry Street with the ministers, two wonderful women ministers that we had, who and Reverend David Burgess, whose book Fighting for Social Justice is a wonderful book that I recommend that everyone get it from the main library. It has 2 chapters about Newark. And Dave Burgess was a former union organizer who became pastor of St. Stephen's Church. And St. Stephen's was an old German congregation, eventually shifted. We've had many shifts in our immigrant populations here in the Ironbound. We still have an immigrant population here. And part of what we do, all the work we do, is to try to work with people together. United, we can win. And so we try to come together in various ways to create that unity. We fought, as I said, we fought 5 incinerators, six incinerators. We beat 5 of them, and we had the one Covanta incinerator, which has now changed its name to try to confuse people, but it's still the largest garbage incinerator in the state and taking garbage from everywhere else. We said in the beginning, you are building this too big. They mentioned it to the county and the city. And sure enough, when they brought in an order of garbage from Ohio, manifest on it. They did floor, and 48 firemen went to the hospital that day. That is something that happened in the beginning of the garbage incinerators history here. So, and there were also smaller, smelly things that people worked with their community to clean up. That warehouse on Thomas Street that I mentioned earlier, the principal of South Street School got involved because that school was half a block away from that toxic time bomb. And he, involving the parents and Ironbound Community Corporation and the Ironbound Committee Against Toxic Waste, that warehouse got cleaned up. That story is in the Ironbound Voices. And I urge you to take advantage of the digital work that we have done to try to tell these stories. And there is a major exhibit that's up until the end of December at the main library on the third floor about Ironbound Community Corporation's 56 years. And I urge people, if you can, go in there anytime the library is open, go up to the third floor. I can't show you this nice picture of a cake that got made for one of the celebrations ICATW probably had, or a statewide meeting. I think this was New Jersey and You, Toxic Waste Too, it says on the cake. Uh, ICATW, ICC helped to start anti-garbage incinerator groups in counties around the state, because there were plans to put a, a garbage incinerator in every county at the beginning. And in the end, the Newark, the places with the residents with the most poverty, and not in the suburban areas. We had a lot of help from uh, people like Lois Gibbs, who was the Love Canal lady, who has been to Ironbound a number of times, which was very good to have her come and talk about how her neighbors and women, formed to deal with the toxic pollution of their homes. And we had Greenpeace here to help us with the fight against what was proposed, the Passaic Valley Sewage Commission, which some of you know is just proposed and got approval for a fossil fuel burning plant. They wanted to build a giant sludge burning plant, the world's largest giant sludge burner. And that was going to be put, and that is when we marched against it. And Greenpeace came and brought a load of green compost that had been made from sludge. And the clean compost was dumped outside the gate of the PVSC, and the community, ICC and ICATW, had marched there, and we had flowers, and the senior citizens brought flowers, and they were planting flowers in that nice clean compost, and we were beautifying that place. But of course, the police were called for trespassing, and two people got arrested. One of them was my husband, and one was the Greenpeace leader of Greenpeace. But there's a great headline in the Star Ledger, which if you go to the library, you'll probably see it. Arrested for planting flowers. And I have a copy of that framed hanging in my house. There were many smaller fights that people, had about things that smelled right on their blocks. And all of those stories are in the Ironbound Voices. We also had a fight about, them knocking down our old Wilson Avenue bathhouse, which was the oldest bathhouse left in the city of Newark. But we thought it should have been saved as a pool. And they said, don't worry, you'll get a new pool. Well, decades later, we said, do you have the land for the new pool? The city said, oh, yes, we have it. We said, have you tested that? They said, oh, yes, we have. But when they dug into that land, smoke came out of it, and the block had to be evacuated. And in the end, they built a new pool after decades of remedial, and they built the pool so that it can move up and down, so that it could be it can be positioned above any contaminated soil. Um, and of course, we had a huge fight. We had two small 10-acre parks in our neighborhood for 50,000 people. And the county and city proposed in 1996 to take away one of those. Half of our recreation space was going to be given to an ex-Yankee who wanted to build a for-profit baseball stadium, and he wanted that land because it would have been free parkland. And the community rose up and said no, but it was a 5-year fight. And that's a story for another day that I'd be happy to tell people, because I'm telling it now in the schools, because I think it's important for young people to know that working together, people can accomplish something and can have victories and create can create can make their communities better. Should I stop talking? We
No,
also
Nancy.
one
Uh,
other thing that was very important in the early years was that we proposed something called the Know Your Rights. What's the name of that law? Know Your Rights. It was a law that said that people would be able to know what chemicals they were working with in their factories, and people living next door would be able to were being used. Um, and we got that law passed. It was passed in about 1983, I'm told by my daughter, the research person. And 1982, it says here. So that was slightly after we had started the Ironbound Committee Against Toxic Waste. And that law became a national law eventually. And we've had a senator come here to Ironbound and celebrate 25 years after that law. He came to our daycare center to talk about how important it was. Newark ICC started the first mobile health van, the first mobile children's health screening van. And that got started so that we could test children throughout the community to see what kind of health problems were going on. And when we found out that there were lots and lots of health problems among the children, especially asthma, which has caused a number of my colleagues to have moved out of this neighborhood even in the last couple decades. Um, the when we found out about the health problems using the screening van, and there's a great picture of Mayor Gibson visiting the screening van as it was being inaugurated by Arnold and others from the Ironbound Committee Against Toxic Waste. And there were so many people involved in the marches and in nighttime. And we learned also that working across ward lines was very powerful. So when they tried to take away our pool, when we were in that fight, we noticed we joined forces with the South Ward. John L. Smith and the Newark swim team were in the South Ward, and John L. is still around and has a wonderful movie about the Newark swim team, which is available somewhere at the Newark Public Library, I think. And John suggested that we work together. His pool, their pool in the South Ward needed huge repairs. It was falling apart and we were losing ours. So we joined forces and people from Valesburg joined us. We formed the Coalition for Better Recreation. We had a candlelight vigil at City Hall on the steps. And we realized at that very moment that a very important power move in Newark was to involve people from other uh, parts of the city and all kinds and ages. Uh-oh, I'm losing my battery. I'll put it on this charger and see.
Thank you, Nancy. Sarah, how are we doing on time?
That's up to you. If you have anything else you want to share, you can go for it. But if not, we can start taking questions.
Sure. Nancy, anything else you want to share? I'll chime in after.
I'm glad that you're reminding us about the time, Hazel, because I don't have a clock in the room that I'm in, so
It's no
no,
problem.
I'll just say that a huge part of what people in the neighborhood had to contend with also was zoning issues. Right at the very beginning in Ironbound's very first issue, 19 Ironbound Voices, there was a move to blight a whole neighborhood, a whole part of the neighborhood. And people from the neighborhood fought that. And because they said it would decrease the value of all of their homes and everything that was there. They said, what if you save your home, but you got factory noise and truck traffic making your life miserable? Decisions are about what gets built, what kind of stores and businesses open will result in changes in life in this neighborhood. And so people began to get involved in neighborhood planning. We had many, many individual um, excursions to the Central Planning Board over the years and to the zoning board. When the cities dropped the ball did not do a master plan, a citywide master plan, they forgot to do it. It was supposed to be done every 10 years. We got a group together called the Master Plan Working Group, and we became involved with neighborhood groups around the city. Newark Coalition for Neighborhoods, it was called. And through those groups, we helped to push the city to hold meetings. And we didn't just we wanted meetings in every neighborhood, in every section of the neighborhood, so that people could look at the maps of their community and say what they thought was good and what they thought needed to be changed. And we had two wonderful pro bono, professional, well-known planners from the state of New Jersey, Alan Malik and Martha Lamar, and they helped us develop an Ironbound Community Master Plan and all the principles that we wanted, including, most important, a huge buffer zone we wanted between residential and industrial. And some of those principles worked their way into the city's overall master plan eventually. And of course, last year they did their 10-year update and we were again involved, but I'm going back to the previous one. So we have been involved in many ways, also saving land for schools because they were starting to build industries. And of course, we had the cumulative impacts ordinance passed in the fairly recent, in the last few years, and that's something that we've been fighting to get them to enforce. And unfortunately, they've been finding loopholes to get around it, and we have to continue to fight. But people know that this stuff is affecting them, and they, there's photographs that say stuff like stop killing us, no more toxic waste. Anyway, I'll stop talking and let people ask questions if they have them. And don't forget, there is much more that you can find out digitally, or going up to the main library or the Van Buren Library, where we have set up a special exhibit in our neighborhood library that people can, and we bring classes from the schools there to learn about. And students say, my community did that. That's my community marching down Ferry Street, 800 strong. Yes. And it really, I think it's very important for young people to learn that the history and the stories, and that people can win. When we saved Riverbank Park, it was a 5-year fight of many ages and everybody in the community, all kinds of people. An old historical park, which by the way is an Olmsted Park and is now on the National Historic Register. But they also said, okay, we'll give you your old park. But we pushed all through that fight. We had a plan, our gateway plan, that our planners, our volunteers, and I think that was done by a special planning group. And we had a very lovely looking vision for how the waterfront could look. And we would flash that in front of all of our politicians and say, and P.S., when are we going to get this? And in 2012, the Riverfront Park opened. And it is not complete. It is partially done. A beautiful walkway is partially done. And we are pushing to get it to go all around up to so that people will be able to walk all the way up to the Performing Arts Center on that beautiful walkway. And we have groups like the Brick City Rowing Club being able to use their boats on the Passaic River instead of having to run up to Nutley to get into the boat. They will be able to use one in Newark.
Nancy, I think being able to hear the history from a person who was there helping to make it happen is very moving and very powerful. I think something else which is very moving and very powerful is the fact that the steps you and others in Newark took to take action against the injustices that were happening in the community helped lay the foundation for laws that benefit everyone in New Jersey. Hazel, do you want to take us a little bit in that direction? And we only have about 10 minutes left for questions and more conversation, but I think the success of the battles and the fights really is only part of the story. I think the organization and I think the long-term impact is just such a success.
Absolutely. We can jump right into the EJ law, right? Which has been very, it's been a fight that, ICC and staff, along with partners such as New Jersey Environmental Justice Alliance, Nikki Sheets, Ana Batista, Maria Lopez Nunez, who, was our director and has transitioned out, right? Melissa Miles, they have, fought with other coalition partners and stakeholders, fought really hard to get that EJ law, the first, right, EJ law passed, right? That got signed in, I believe is 2020. And basically partially what that law says, right, is that, these companies that gets permits, right, they're now they have to go through a permitting process, right? Where the EJ law is actually, spells out, right? What are some of the criterias that needs to be met before they get permitted, right? And there's periods where, where there's public comments, right? When you're going through permitting, right? And there are procedures that DEP needs to follow, right? And that helps, right, with limiting the impact, right? That a lot of these toxic polluters, right, have on our community, right? Where in the past they were not, regulated. So that's one of the ways that ICC, has definitely showed up, right? Along with its partners. And Nancy talked a lot about coalition building. And so for folks that are on this call, it's important that you get with like-minded people who believe in the same thing. You all don't have to agree about the same thing all the time, right? But you're working towards ultimately that goal, and you're able to work together, because it is very difficult to try to fight this fight alone. And also looking at what folks have done in the past. Like, it's great looking at what ICC has done in the past, right? For example, the Ford power plant, fossil fuel power plant in the Ironbound section of Newark, we've been fighting that for many, many years. And although it got passed to start being developed, right, we're still looking at ways, right, in order to basically, stop the power plant from being built, because we strongly believe that it's toxic for our neighborhood. We believe in clean energy and clean energy solutions, right? And no fossil fuel at all, 100% clean energy. So we're going to continue to fight for that, and continue to fight, not as ICC, we do it in coalition. So that's also important. So it's, like I said in the beginning, right, looking at policies, seeing what policies need to be changed, and it does take a while, right? But working towards it, civic engagement, making sure that you get community out, host community meetings. Sometimes you get two people to show up, three people to show up, but consistency is very important, right? Because you don't want to bring the issue to community 2 weeks before or 2 months before. If it's ongoing, then it gives them time to process and understand, because this work is very complicated. So you continue to talk about, what could happen in your community. For example, when the city's going through their master planning, right, that you're involved in that and you're talking to that at a community level, and getting folks involved and having them understand how those changes can impact them, not now, but 10 years down the line, right? Because if you have zoning changes where, you're zoned for a 2-story, a 3-story, next thing you know, you're zoned for a 15-story, a 20-story, right? That changes your community drastically in many different ways, right? And sometimes, folks really don't understand that. And going to city council, right, and talking about, your issues and showing up, right? That's all part of civic engagement, right? So I know I've said a lot. I hope that answers your question. I can give you any more that you would like, right? But I totally appreciate being here and being able to share, my experience along with Nancy's. Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah?
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nancy and Hazel. It was great to hear the full history and all of that background. I really appreciate you taking the time. And Gus, Gustavo, thank you for sharing the screen for us. I want to open the floor to anyone who might have questions for maybe Nancy or Hazel. You can send them in the chat, or you can just ask.
If I could just jump in, I want to just thank you all very much. Nancy, you're a real hero of mine. And Hazel, so glad to have you aboard at ICC. I'm Hugh Carolla. I'm the program director at Hackensack Riverkeeper. I'm also the other captain at Hackensack Riverkeeper. And it's been our privilege and honor to be, for the last 15 years, doing eco cruises on the Passaic River from Riverfront Park in the Ironbound, and telling the stories of what you've done. And we've had members of the board. Maria's been out with us before. I think, Nancy, I know you've been out with us in the past. I just want to say one quick thing. Is every time that we go past Covanta and I tell the story of how you folks fought and fought and fought, I say they may have lost the battle here in Newark, but they won the war for everybody else in the state of New Jersey, for every community of color, for every poor community, for every marginalized community where the state was going to put in every single county an incinerator because of the fight you wonderful people put up. You won the war for everybody else. So, props all the way, honors and respect all the way. So just thank you for keeping doing what you're doing, and it's wonderful. And like I said, like-minded people working together get stuff done. So thank you, thank you, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's great to hear you, Huge. Cute.
Awesome. Does anyone have any other follow-up questions? We only have about 5 minutes left, but if anyone has a question or comment,
I just wanted to add in here, you talk about it takes a long time to make change happen. It doesn't happen overnight. But, you know, I think I was reminded of that, especially when Nancy talked about seeing one of her former students at a demonstration, and that student now being in their 30s and sharing their own health issues and the impact of where they had been playing had on her and the challenges her children. The battles that take place today, short-term impact is for the people living there today. Long-term impact is the future generations and the children. And that's why it's so important to educate, 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 because when we teach our children right from wrong, hopefully they take those lessons with them through their whole life. And when they see communities working together uh, to make change happen, hopefully they take that lesson with them through life as well. So, I just, keep up the good work. Keep up the good battle. Keep up, educating everyone and anyone about the work that you're doing, the change that's needed, and why. Not just that we can't allow this, but why. That education component is so important. And I just thank you for everything, Hazel, you and ICC is doing, and Nancy, your perseverance, and persistence, I think is so important. But thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the chance to talk to you all.
Yes, thank you. And I appreciate being here, and I appreciate you having me, Sarah and Paula. And if there's any questions, I was putting my email in the chat, for anyone who wants to get in contact with me, definitely I can put my email in the chat. And I can ask Gustafa to put his email in Nancy's email. So any one of us that you would like to get in contact with, please feel free, and we can definitely answer any questions that you have and give any guidance that's needed. Or if you're just up for a quick chat on anything related to EJ, you can give us a call.
Good idea, Hazel. Thank you.
You're welcome. Gustav, you want to drop Nancy's on in there? I don't think she could.
Yes, if you could, that would be great. And if anyone goes to the library for the exhibit, make sure you sign the guest book on your way, because we are trying to continue to tell the stories, and part of that involves funding and continuing resources for people to continue the work. We have wonderful young colleagues and old colleagues and people who've been involved forever, but some of us are getting old. Anyway, if you go to the exhibit, sign in and tell us what you think of it. All right.
Great. Thank you,
Thank you.
Paula. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, guests.
And good night, everyone.
Good night.
yes, thank you all for
Thank
joining
you.
us tonight. Have a good
Bye.
night.
Come to Riverbank Park for an event, and look for me. We have music on Wednesday, one of the Essex County Summer Music Series, is coming to Riverbank Park on Wednesday night if it doesn't rain too much. Yes, so we'll look for people. We have wonderful events there with us. We involve our local schools. And that is a part of the way to reach the young people, which we want to be able to continue. All right.
Have a good night. Take care,
Thank
everybody.
you and good night.
Good night.
Thanks everyone for joining us. Have a good evening.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to talk.
Good
We
job.
love to tell the stories.